Joining me now, Senator Kevin Cramer, our go-to guy on pretty much everything. Senator Cramer, let me get this right. These climate reparations will, from rich countries, by the way, they'll never be paid, but the promise, we're going to have climate reparations to poorer countries so they will never use oil and gas fossil fuel production, even though they would desperately like any more energy, including fossil fuels. What do you make of this? This is a genius idea, right?
It might be the most absurd policy, international policy I've ever heard of. In fact, when they were first talking about it, I thought, you've got to be kidding me. First of all, nations like us, and I don't know how many of them are just like us, but we can't afford to give more money to other people, especially for the purpose of reparations, as they call them, as some sort of a guilt payment because we're more developed than they are. In fact, what they ought to do is just say, thank you very much, United States of America, for providing security for us, for stabilizing our governments, for defending us, for feeding us. Instead, they demand payments, and John Kerry's dumb enough to sign off on it. Crazy, when we don't even have the money. Even if we had the money, it wouldn't be in the top 1 million things that I'd do with it on behalf of the people of the United States. So, no, it's a crazy scheme, and I don't see how it ends with what they're hoping for. We just got the announcement this week, right, that Saudi Arabia and the OPEC Plus are going to increase production. That's good. That helps bring down the price of fuel and oil, which is good for the economy in general. But think of how much better it would be if the United States was the country meeting those demands rather than Saudi Arabia or Venezuela or some other country. So your monologue was right on. By the way, I don't think you oversimplified the economic model at all. I think, if anything, too many people complicate what is really rather simple.
Well, thanks for that. I don't know. Saudis kind of denied that they would print 500,000 more barrels, but we'll see what they do when they make up their mind. But I think they're
going to do what they want to do.
Well, listen.
Right? They're going to do what they want to do, not what Joe Biden wants them to do.
Well, right. So if we produced more, and we should be up to 14, 15 million barrels a day, 14 to 15 million barrels a day is where we should be, we wouldn't care what they did. We would be the market price dominant independent country. I mean, isn't that? And here's, wait, Senator, this is too good to be true. You have to pinch yourself, some of the stuff that we're reading about coming from the White House. So now, having run an anti-Saudi, quote, human rights policy for 2 years, going to Iran, which upsets the Middle Eastern apple cart. Now I read that the Bidens will provide MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, will provide him with immunity from any investigations here or prosecutions in the United States. The whole point of Biden's thing was to go after him. Now he gives us the back of his hand a couple of weeks ago by cutting back 2 million barrels a day, and we're going to give him immunity? Really? I mean, this is the most incoherent policy I've ever heard of.
That's right. This is the hypocrisy that they're so famous for, and it makes zero sense. It's complicated when it should be rather simple. I mean, Saudi Arabia has always been a complicated ally, but they are, for the most part, an ally, as are other, by the way, Middle Eastern nations that get treated poorly by this administration until you need something from them. And if you just be consistent, things would operate so much better. But now you're right. We negotiate on the one hand with Iran while we beat up on Saudi Arabia, and then we plead to Saudi Arabia for help while we continue negotiating with Iran. Venezuela, we ask them for more production of filthy oil. A couple of statistics I think you might be interested in, Larry. In North Dakota, we are now producing about 1.1 million barrels of oil per day. So we're down a little from our peak, but we do that with under 5,000 pads, okay? 1.1 million, 5,000 pads. California produces 400,000 barrels with 200,000 pads. In other words, we know how to do it cleaner than anybody in the world. The cleanest barrel of oil comes from the Bakken. Let's produce more here, not rely on and be dependent on Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, Iran, and others.
For the umpteenth thousandth time, maybe we have the full screen or maybe not, we produce, let me rephrase that. Our American reduction in carbon emissions is by far the largest of the OECD industrialized world. By far. No one is even close. So we are self-flagellating and putting America last. closing down fossil fuels, and now this goofy reparation scheme. So Kerry wants no one to use fossil fuels around the world, and there are countries in poverty that would have, they have the resources in Africa particularly, they'd love to use fossil fuels. That's how dumb this is. We are the leader in carbon reduction, and now we're trying to tell everybody else, don't do what has made us in great shape. I mean, this is just nuttier than nutty.
It's very nutty. And again, a lot of these countries we've supported immensely with our wealth, with the riches of being, the most successful developed nation in the world. And by the way, helping other countries become developed. But here's the interesting thing. If we are going to continue to tackle global climate change, and I'm not hysterical about it like John Kerry is, but whatever your position, we're the ones, the United States and our innovation and our advancements are the ones that are going to solve this problem, but not if you kill the innovators. It's just truly absurd. We should try to be lifting the world up, not dragging the world down and us with them.
Just one quickie, sir, 30 seconds. Shutting down coal plants in Texas because of EPA overregulation. What do you make of that?
Well, it's going to cost the ratepayers and the consumers a lot of money if that continues, if that actually happens, because here's a relatively new plant. The extra costs are just pure regulation. Who's going to replace that plant? Is it even depreciated? I'm an old, energy regulator. I used to regulate rates for a living. You're going to have to back that up with something else. I don't see it. Texas has already proven to have lots of problems in the wintertime. I think you need this reliable, low-cost electricity. And you look at places like China, by the way, one of those developing nations that won't be paying into this reparations fund. They build more in a year than the rest of the world does. So makes no sense.
I call China the climate global warming hero of the world. They are the best. They go to these conferences, they make all these speeches, and then they go out to build 200 coal plants. 60% of their energy comes from coal. And on top, I don't see the fine print yet. It's possible, since they're a, quote, undeveloped country, that John Kerry will be giving China reparations. How about that? Is that the next shoe to fall?
Right. Well, they're technically, I would say entitled to it because they are, quote, developing under the United Nations definitions of developing. Now, certainly we wouldn't let that happen, I would hope. And in fact, if anybody's going to pay into the fund, they should. They are by far the biggest polluter, speaking of coal. And next to them is India, speaking of coal. And so the idea that China would be exempt from paying in, and worse, a recipient of this largesse from countries that are developed is absurd to me, of course. I think it's absurd to anybody that understands it.
Senator Kevin Cramer, happy Thanksgiving, sir. Thanks for all you do.
Happy Thanksgiving, Larry.
You betcha.
Thank you.